So good afternoon or good day to everybody. Welcome to this webinar. This is about Circle CI. I am excited to be here. So a little introduction about myself. I am Falguni Gondnale, a software engineer at Integral. And I'm really excited to be here, share my experience, my journey with Circle CI, and how it helped me understand CI/CD better. Something about my journey before using Circle CI, or getting more hands-on experience with pipelines. I wasn't a fan of DevOps and builds and pipelines. And I have realized over time it was because in my previous projects, I was working in a managed environment. So I did not interact with a CI/CD servers or the pipelines. And because of this lack of interaction, it translated to my lack of knowledge and understanding of CI/CD. So today I will be talking about getting started with CI/CD, particularly with this tool, because using this tool is where I have gotten most hands-on experience on creating a pipeline and getting involved with CI/CD more. And so with this tool, I'll be talking about its feature and how you can use it. Before we get started, I just want to let everybody know the target audience for this presentation are those who are getting started with pipelines, are interested in learning more about Circle CI, and in general who want to take control or be more involved with their own applications, pipelines, and its lifecycle. Some also things for rules for the webinar is I want this to be interactive, so please feel free to ask questions. You can raise your hand using the Zoom feature, and Lindsay will call out the person's name and they can proceed to ask questions, and you can then unmute and ask the questions. Also, I will pause at the end of slides for questions, so again you can unmute and ask the questions. All right. As for the agenda, what I want to walk through today is how easy it's to get started with this tool to build your pipeline, and we'll also explore, is it flexible enough for your application, because each application, each project is unique. And also we'll dive into finding out how fast is the pipeline, because when I think about pipelines, as an engineer, as a developer, I expect that my pipeline is fast because I want faster feedbacks. I want everything to be fast. So let's get started. Any questions? Okay. Um, so having asked about my journey with CI/CD, the first question that popped into my mind is, well, what is CI/CD? Isn't it continuous integration and continuous development? Like everybody has heard about it, but what does it mean? Why is it important? So I am going to go briefly over these concepts, what I understand from it, what's my understanding. So what's CI? CI stands for continuous integration. So what do you mean by continuous integration is the expectation that when you are building your project, the whole project is built, you are running automated testing suite against the change that you have merged in, or any change that you have made to the main branch. So the underlying assumption here is, to leverage the full advantage of CI, you have to have a testing suite so that you can run a change against everything that you have existing. So what do you need the CI for? For me, if I am continuously integrating my changes, I have more confidence in the new features that I'm building or any changes that I'm making. It is more about a quick feedback, because rather than pushing a bug into production and it being reported by customers, I would rather find it in development or in a testing environment and fix it uh, before it makes a huge bad impact. And also when making changes, any ad hoc changes, making any patches to the code or hot fixes, I want to know if my existing features are still working. Places where places in the code where I have not touched the code, they should be working as expected. So with continuous integration, it's about running an automated testing suite on the pipeline. um, Moving on to CD part of CI/CD, what does it mean? Is it continuous delivery or continuous deployment? It stands for both, and let's talk about what's the difference. So continuous delivery is when the result of a successful build can be pushed to testing on production environment. However, continuous delivery is manual, meaning someone somewhere will have to go and click a button to deploy it to production. Deploying it to production means that it's accessible to your end customers, and that's where continuous deployment comes in. Continuous deployment goes one step further than continuous delivery. With this, every successful build that passes all stages of your pipeline is released to the customers. There's no human intervention, and only a failed test will prevent a change to being deployed to production. So continuous deployment, this comes in to picture when you have a website, and you just want that every time customers have the latest and greatest in their hand. Any questions? You can unmute and ask it. Lindsay, I do. Somebody has raised their hand.
Yep, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question. Okay, I think we can go ahead. It looks like in the chat they're all set.
Okay. All right. So knowing what CI/CD is, and that I want to use it for my application as a developer, as I said, I have certain expectations when checking out a new tool. So what we'll be stepping more and talking more about is how easy it to get started with it, use it, and hopefully the learning curve is not that steep. It has to be flexible, especially if you are moving from one application to another. I would like to retain most of the processes that I was doing earlier, and since each application is unique, having the option to customize my pipeline as per the application can go a long way in retaining those processes. Um, Also, one of the reasons why we use CI/CD is for faster feedback. The best quality of a pipeline, I feel, can be that it fails fast so that I can keep improving my application. Keeping these in mind, let's move on, and I will be talking about the parts that make this tool easy. So easy to use, and what I expect from other CI/CD tools as well. So the thing, when I say my tool should be easy, it means that it should be easy to understand and easy to work with. So what excites me the most about Circle CI is the almost plug and play approach. The first point that I want to talk about is integration with GitHub and Bitbucket. So GitHub and Bitbucket are your version control system where you have your code physically checked into, and its history is maintained. You can create branches, etc. So I will be concentrating on GitHub, and it's because I have used this the most. And I will talk about my experience of integrating Circle CI with GitHub. To get started, you can go to the Circle CI website and log into the web application using GitHub. So that's one. You are already into the Circle CI ecosystem. And with GitHub, you can give access to your projects for Circle CI to see them and reflect them in its web application. And to do so, you have to be an admin in the project and the GitHub organization. And also, you can integrate Circle CI app with the GitHub organization to see checks every time a pipeline is run on a PR. So it's very cool because if you trigger uh, a PR, you make some changes to it. So with every commit to the PR, at the bottom of the PR, you can see if the pipeline is failing or what its status is. Another advantage of integrating with GitHub is that you don't have to worry about user administration. All GitHub project users get access to the project in the Circle CI dashboard. So this is such a relief, unlike older tools like Jenkins, where you have to log in as an admin and handle user management right from authorization to authentication. So once you have given access, you can see in the UI, you can see your project. And with that, you can basically get started with a basic pipeline within a day. Also, with GitHub, with every build, a build is triggered in the pipeline with each commit that you make, each merge that you do with the main branch and with your tagged releases. So these are the events that you get automatically on which a pipeline build would be triggered. And also sometimes you don't want that a build is triggered with each minute, maybe because the build is too huge or it's too costly. So you can restrict some of the workflows builds by adding filters on branches and release tags. And I will be talking about it more later. Uh, Next is that there are two hosting options that Circle CI provides. One of them is what I talked about right now, is cloud-based web application. So you can just go to the Circle CI homepage, sign up with GitHub, and get started. The UI, I feel it's easy to understand and intuitive. Once you log in on the projects dashboard, you can see your projects that GitHub, that Circle CI has access to via GitHub. And you can also use the setup button to set up a pipeline. And this is what I have worked with mostly. And this is what I will be speaking and concentrating more on. The other option is self-hosted on your own server. To get started with this, you would need to contact Circle CI and work with them to set up the infrastructure. You have to have the ability to run, you can have the ability to run busy pipelines on your own clusters. And I have limited knowledge about this, but I am hoping most of the features they will be what you get in the web application. Uh, and with the web UI, you do get a dashboard, the project's dashboard. It is very informative, and I feel it's simple and intuitive. If you are added to a project in GitHub, you can access the project in the dashboard. And to see the pipeline, you have to follow the project explicitly in the UI. And for much better user experience for each pipeline, you can see jobs um, that the pipeline is broken into with smaller jobs. It points to a breaking build so that you don't have to read through a long console output and look at the correct error. And because of this, because you are able to see where exactly my build is breaking, there's no need to reach out to DevOps for a simple failing build. You can simply log into the web app and debug for yourself. And I will be talking more about workflows and jobs. I'll pause if there are any questions. All right. Moving on. So other two things that I want to talk about is using YAML file to get started and configure your projects. So with this, you don't have to uh, like go to any admin page or any configuration page. You just need to maintain this config.yaml file as code, and you can check it in into your repo to get up and running. And everybody has access to this pipeline, to this configuration file. And also configuring with YAML is pretty standard, pretty industry standard nowadays. You can uh, not only use configuration file for Circle CI, but YAML itself, it is powerful and it has a lot of features, so you can use that. Other tools like Azure, GitHub Actions, Concourse, they also use configuration in YAML in a YAML file to configure their pipelines. And yeah, as I said, you don't need to log into a different administrative or configuration page to maintain a pipeline. It's all in this file. Also with each job in your build, you get a clean pipeline. Uh, Circle CI uses something called executors or environments where we will be running our code, and every time we run a job, Circle CI provides this new, fresh, clean environment. This eliminates the need to maintain or to run the environment. So it's just one time setup. There's no need to maintain it, clean it, or um, do whatever. So it's just less overhead at all, overhead overall. And I will be talking more about environments shortly. Any more questions? Okay. Uh, Next up, flexibility. So that was what I thought was easy about getting started with Circle CI. Next, I expect that the tool should be flexible. That is, because each application is unique, they have different dependencies. So I want us to take a look at how we can customize our application. So a fresh start. Um, as I mentioned earlier, you get a clean environment for each job. And you would need to configure your project to choose an environment or a different environment to different jobs to build the code. And, it can be different for each job. Uh, and you don't have to worry about cleaning up from previous jobs because you get a fresh start. So Circle CI supports container images for Dockers. And so you can use images from Docker Hub. Docker Hub is where you can get images which are free and available for everybody. And you can get some popular images like for Java or Postgres or Redis like that. So not only that, Circle CI provides some popular images on its own developer hub, and you can choose a basic Ubuntu image or some language images like OpenJDK, Python, PHP, Ruby, Go, etc. Um, you also have the option of using your own custom images. Um, so you can create your own images uh, by building it scratch up from a Docker file, uploading it to a Docker registry. That's the whole process. And for a smoother experience, Circle CI has partnered with Docker to ensure that the Circle CI users can continue to access Docker Hub without rate limits. That's a problem that Docker users sometimes face, is that if they are downloading too many images, they do get throttled. So that's something that Circle CI has seen and have partnered to ensure a smoother experience. Also, for each job or each pipeline, it's possible that you can use multiple images, and so the order in which they are defined, the second, third, or fourth images, they act as a service to base image. So you get this whole environment, this whole cluster of containers which are acting like one big application. Uh, Next, so you do get support for virtual machines as well. You have the option to use Linux, Mac OS. However, Mac OS is available with a paid plan only. But you can use Windows, and you can specify resources as per your requirements. So there are different resource classes available to you for these virtual machines. You have options like small, medium, large, extra large, etc. What they mean is uh, uh, the resources, they have different number of CPUs and RAMs for these classes, and Circle CI has great documentation, so you can always log in, check out their website and see which resource you can use for your need. Any question? Okay, moving on. So I will not be getting into demos today, but I will be talking about configuration files, which, as you see, are at the core of building the pipeline. So here is a snapshot of a configuration file. From a look here, as you can see, it reads well, it's easy to understand. And let's just see what it says. So here I have defined an executor, which is the keyword for environment. Um, so I have named an environment called Java image, and I'm providing a base Circle CI image from Circle CI, and I have assigned it a resource class of extra large. This is a brand new Ubuntu image with the bare minimum installed on it. And the resource class means here that you get 8 CPUs and 16 GB of RAM assigned to that container, and build a job. Um, the other option here that I have shown is a custom image. So you access the image by providing the image name, the image version, and if it's behind any you know authorization wall, you will need to provide the username and password. And you see here that it's a variable, right? The dollar Docker Hub username, dollar Docker Hub password. These are environment variables which are available to the container environment. And I will be talking about it more later. Next up. So let's imagine this scenario where you have this project where it's a Java, Python, Maven project. So I just want to say that it might sound like it's a difficult environment, but using these executors into your job, you can simply handle this. And let's see how using how you can handle this unique combination of environments in your configuration file. So yeah, um, as you can see here, so I have the two images. So I have two unique environments here. The first one is OpenJDK, that's my Java image. And then I am also using a Python image. Let's say it's an application where I process something in Java to communicate with my backend, and I use Python script to do some processing quickly. So I have this defined those images, and I have two jobs. So my two jobs are a Java build where I have defined that I'm using a Java image. Um, yeah, okay, that's better now. So here I am defining this Java image, and there, depending on what's available in my image, I am doing a Maven clean verify. And in my Python build, that's the name of the job, by the way. So I'm using the executor that is the Python image, and I am just running a simple command where in my code base I have a sample Python script, so I can just do, oops, do Python and run that script. So just in these many lines, you can you can compile and build Java code as well as run a Python script, which I think is pretty powerful given the number of lines and words that we are using. So earlier I touched upon spinning up an environment and environment variables, and this is what the spinning up environment would look like. So with every job, you get this option of spinning up an environment, and here you can see what image or what environment that you are using in the job and everything, like what are the steps for pulling that image. I wanted to show this so that you get an idea of how an environment is set up. Any questions?
I have one question. So
Yep.
I'm just getting confused on what is exactly a circle CI, because when we talk about say pipeline, and then what I think that there are certain commands that has to be automated, like it should be triggered. So that's what a pipeline. I thought that this is what a circle CI do. For example, whenever any update goes on GitHub, and then certain command
Mm-hmm.
has to be saying that you have to build a Docker image, or maybe you need to put that Docker image into a server. Server can be a cloud or something else. But
Mm-hmm.
here when you mentioned that you can procure some images in the Circle CI, so
Mm-hmm.
here Mike, and then looking at the your screen. So
Mm-hmm.
what I feel that the deployment part is on the machine which I procure using Circle CI. So what is this Circle CI? Is it like a cloud based, or
Yeah,
I'm just
I am concentrating mostly on the cloud-based hosting that you get. Like you can go to the Circle CI website connected to your GitHub account, right? So like breaking down your question. So the first question you asked is when is the pipeline or the build triggered? So when you sign up or connect your GitHub account to Circle CI app, and you have added this configuration file into your code, you have checked it in, and once that has been done, so every time you make a commit, you merge a PR, or you have a tagged release in GitHub, the pipeline will be triggered. Okay, so these are the three events which guarantee that a build will be triggered for your code. And the next part of our question was, where are you getting these images? So for some images, they are available by Circle CI. So here I have defined Circle CI OpenJDK, and it's a Docker image. So Circle CI will know to go to, it's wherever it has hosted it images, to go to that repository and get this environment. And because you are using this Docker image, this Java image in your job, you have defined it here. So to run this Java build, the Circle CI will pull this image and spin up a container environment where you can run this command. So that's what I
Okay.
was trying to show here, is that, in your job, you have to define which environment or executor that you are using. So the first step that's done is you spin up the environment. It builds a container for you, or a virtual machine, depending on what you are choosing. And there you can run these commands.
Okay, what if I have to connect to say Google Cloud, GCP or AWS, because here you have procured within a Circle CI, so all
Mhm.
this path is like a local path. And then what if I have to connect to some other server, say Google
Okay.
Cloud Azure, something else? Yeah.
Yeah.
So in that
So
way,
okay. Again, breaking down your question. So I have personally not used AWS or GCP, but in my research, I have seen that you can use Docker images, or create an or Docker image, which will connect to AWS or GCP, and have all the setup and the basic commands, which will allow you to establish that connection. So you can do that. And when I say working directory, this is local to the container itself. So so whenever your code, it's mounted to the Docker container image, it will be placed under the uh, local path inside your own directory called code repo. And you can define like this working directory as where your code actually is, and where you can run your commands directly. Does that answer your question?
um, mm, yeah, I mean, somewhat. So I mean, I was just thinking that that how it will access all the images that is in different server. So maybe we can pass an URL or something authorization that we can give.
Yeah.
But
So
uh,
so say if you have a, like this, right? You have a private Gmet in a private repository, right? So you will have to uh, supply the Docker hub, or whatever your repository's username and password, to do that. And when you are setting up your image, maybe you can make sure that you have logged in to that repository. Like, you can specify the Docker login command there. So
okay,
what I'm touching here is basically very simple use cases, but you can definitely, as per your requirement, as you said, right, like, connect it, do those small steps to make sure that you are connected to get your images, or connect to other cloud hosted platforms.
Exactly. All the questions that, currently I'm working on a project. So, I have to deploy in their own server. So
Hmm.
whether to use Circle CI or going forward to use some other tool. So that is why I'm asking these questions. I've never used Circle CI
Okay.
personally. Yeah.
Uh, you can definitely email me, and I would love to help you out on that if I can.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. I'll just think about, that how will I connect to it? Because, using Circle CI VM, there will be some issues of data governance and some other stuff, because there has to be some, configurations or some data engineers need to, or admin there to take care of any, you know, like a data gaps or something else. So there will
Hmm.
be an issue if we cannot have an image out. So that's what
Yeah.
I was thinking. Yeah.
All right. Thank you for your question.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So we were here spinning up our environment. Okay. So once you have, you have successfully developed and tested your application, the next step is to make sure that your artifacts or your application is available to be used by your clients. So Circle CI can deploy to many targets. Some of them are AWS, Google Kubernetes Engine, Azure, etc. And Circle CI, as I mentioned, has great docs. You can find some deployment examples there. Um, so if these are not the tools that you are using to distribute your artifact, you can use bash commands, SSH, or API clients. In my experience, I have used deployment with curl commands and used Maven for deploying or distributing the artifact to Artifactory. So you can, yeah, use like a Maven profile, uh, like Maven deployment tags, uh, all of that. Also, to distribute securely, and in fact, if you would also want to you secure an environment and share some information across your projects, you can use environment variables. And there are two types. You can organize your environment variables in two different ways. One of them is called context, the other one is project variables. So context is exactly like what it sounds. It's setting context for all your projects in at the GitHub organization level, because how you organize your projects in GitHub is how you will see it in Circle CI. So these are environment variables which you set at the highest level. They are available to all the projects, and it's simply key value pair, where the key is the environment variable name and pair is the value. And once you save it in the Circle CI, it's redacted. You cannot see it later on. Same goes for project variables. Its scope is restricted to a project, and you can also, while creating new project variables, you can import variables from other projects. And these all variables are injected into your environment when you are using them for a job. So here is where I want to show. So this is the next step after spinning up your environment, where you'll see preparing environment variables, and these are bunch of default um, variables that you get by Circle CI, and they might look like they're a lot, but they are certainly helpful, and you can use them to change or filter your pipelines. And any of uh, uh, your own environment variables, they will show up here as this message says. um, This is just a little screenshot of how you can add environment variables at project level. This is the key value pair. It's redacted, and also you can import variables from any existing project if you just want to use them. And if you are importing too many variables, maybe they should be in the context. Okay, so another expectation from my pipeline is that it should be fast. It should be able to build my pipeline fast. So let's see how we can get faster feedback from our pipelines. So as I mentioned, that a build can be triggered by committing to a branch, or when you are committing any changes to a PR, when you are merging to the main branch, or you have a tagged release on GitHub. So that's how a build can be triggered. And you can organize your pipelines into workflows. So you can have different workflow, like you want to have a build and test, you can have a Maven test or a Gradle test where you are just building and testing. And then you can have a release pipeline. So a release pipeline would have some extra steps where it would connect to your deployment or distribution repository, and just do extra steps to ensure that it's distributing the artifacts correctly and securely. So you can break down a workflow into smaller jobs. So the image here is of a whole workflow, and it has a lot of smaller jobs. With smaller jobs, you save development time through faster feedback reruns, and you respond to failures sooner. So whenever any job fails for any reason, these little green check marks turn red, and you can spot that that job has failed. And you can organize your workflow into smaller pipelines as per your need. And as you can see here, you can organize your jobs into different formats. Like it can be a sequential. So when I say sequential, it means that jobs are dependent on jobs before it, and they need to pass in that order to proceed. You can have parallel jobs. So jobs here, they are running parallelly, and just that parallel jobs are available in paid version with multiple agents. Or you can also leverage this if your code is a open source repository. And then you can fan in and fan out your jobs uh, as per your needs. Also, I found something interesting is manual approvals. Yeah, so let's talk about branch filters and tags. Here, sometimes you want to filter your pipeline based on what you are doing. So you can choose to run to build some branches over some other branches. For example, in case of a deploy, I think this offers a safety net, because I don't want to accidentally deploy something or overwrite an artifact. And also, if you are choosing to run some builds based on filtered branches, you are saving build minutes, because, for example, you might not want to trigger a pipeline if the change is just a document change, or it's some sort of change that does not need my whole pipeline to be built or tested. So you can either filter on branches or ignore some workflows depending on branches or tag. I will show how it looks like uh, in a pipeline. And also you can schedule your workflows. I'll show you how it looks like. Before that, this is what I was saying, what a broken build would look like. So, if you have a huge workflow with many jobs like these, you can go to exactly where the build is failing, which is, like the first step of debugging is faster. You just know where something has gone wrong. Um, Also, talking about deployment, there is this concept of manual approvals, which I haven't used, but I found during my research and I wanted to share. So workflows can be configured to wait for manual approval of a job like deployment before continuing um, to finish the pipeline. Anyone who has push access to the repository can click the approval button by going to the workflow and clicking on a job. So you'll have to go to the dashboard and click on the job to approve it. Okay, so yeah, so this is an example of configuration file of a workflow with different jobs in it. Like previous, I showed you there's a Python build, there's a Java build, and let's say there was a Maven test for running all the tests and no build. So this job here, it has different flavors where it's sequential. So the Java build depends on the Python build. So that's the sequential part. And you'll see here this job Maven test, it requires the Python build, as so does the Java build. So once the Python build is successful, any of these two builds will be triggered if you are not on a paid plan, or if you are, both of these jobs will be triggered parallelly. So that's how you can organize it. There's this also example of how you can filter a job on, say, branches. So I have mentioned here that this Java build can only run on the main branch. So if you make any comment to the main branch or any changes, this build will be triggered. Similarly, you can filter running a job with tags. So if you want to uh, trigger a release workflow, you can filter on a tag. And you can use regex because tags look different for different projects. This is how you can schedule a workflow. You can use a cron job and define what jobs need to be run on this scheduled workflow. Because in interest of time, I will have to go a little bit faster. But do please ask questions if you have any. All right, so we learned a lot about feedback. You need faster feedback to adapt to changes. But what if a build fails? What if a job is not running as per your expectation? So there's no need to reach out to the infrastructure team or the SRE team to request for access or request the logs. Uh, so what you can do is, as I showed, if any job has failed, you can simply rerun that job and keep an eye on the logs and observe the logs real time to see what went wrong. And you can also download the logs. And rerunning a failed job is also a nifty way of saving your build minutes, because you're not running the whole 10-minute pipeline, maybe just this 2-minute job. So that's when, something happens like a test fails. But what if you see a cryptic error that you don't know how to resolve? So what you can do is use SSH login to log into the container and move around to see what went wrong. To use this feature, you would have to add an SSH key from your machine to GitHub, and Circle CI coordinates with GitHub to see if you have access to it or not. So you can trigger a SSH login from the UI itself. You will see an option to rerun this job using SSH, and a job or a step will be triggered in your job called enable SSH, where it will just give you instruction on how to SSH into that remote container where your code is running. Uh, this has been helpful when when you have mounted your code into the container and you cannot find a file, or you are unable to access the Jacogo test results which you want to analyze and stuff like that. This SSH login really comes handy then. And also a small thing, you get web notifications for your pipeline if it has succeeded or not. One of the ways to make pipeline faster is you can cache all those build files to be reused. Options are using workspace cache, cache between two different workflows, and artifacts. Using this feature right will help speed up your builds, improve repeatability, and improve efficiency. So there are different types of cache. There's a workspace cache, which is a temporary workspace associated with one whole workflow. The workspace can be used to pass along build files from one job to another. And it is useful when you are building in one step and deploying in another. Workspace, it contains all temporary files and everything else. It passes along unique data during jobs, and you cannot delete the workspace, and the uh, and it is really helpful when you are rerunning the workflow. So one of the example is when you have build in one job and test in one job. So so when you are building, the test job can use this file, so it doesn't have to build. It can just directly test on those build files. And the other thing is caching between different workflows. So you can use save cache and retrieve cache between the different workflows, like dependencies, expensive fetches from data store, or source code. And in my experience, the biggest effect of speeding up of your pipeline I have seen using cache is on clean Maven runs. So anyone who has used Maven, they know that if you are running with an empty M2 repository, downloading all the dependencies can on a fresh environment, which we do have for each job, it can take 10 plus minutes, and nobody wants to wait that long for a single job. So you can cache the build files after an initial run and just use it for consecutive workflows, and it does really help us fasten the pipeline. So these were most of the basic features or features that you would use, in your day-to-day life working with Circle CI. Some of the advanced features that Circle CI offers are matrix jobs. I'll just quickly go through these. So matrix jobs, let's just see. Yeah, so metrics jobs are like, how using the YAML language feature is you can define these parameters which you expect in a job, and then, pass it, use it in the job and pass it real time. So the matrix multiplication sort of comes in here handy. So this job of running node, this yarn test, it would be run with different combination of your OS and version here. So you can have Linux 10, 11, 12, and run this node test with a Mac 10, 11, 12, so you can filter it by including and excluding some versions. This is especially handy if you are using a lot of different versions. Also, to have faster pipelines, you can run tests in parallel, and you can run tests in parallel by spreading them across multiple containers of your same job. There are also this thing called Docker layer caching, and it is a paid feature, and it is helpful if you are building Docker images as a regular part of the process. So just as what it says is all the Docker layers will be cached, and only those which have any changes will be built, so that your pipeline's faster. So because we have so many features, and if it's a complicated project and you are using all of these configurations in your configuration file can get huge. So there is this concept of orbs. So orbs are shareable packages of configuration elements. Personally, I have not used it, but on just like small projects. So so you can basically split up your configuration file and take out the common configuration, save it at an organization level so that different projects can just include it. So what this does is it makes the configuration file more readable. The configuration file is split into a digestible size so that it's simple, it's readable, and you can work with it easily. And the Circle CI is heavily leaning on orbs so that it becomes easier to adopt, and you can read more about it. So I talked about metrics jobs. So that concludes my presentation. Sorry, I had to rush through it. Some thoughts about adopting Circle CI. If you want to use it, it's free for small projects, and you can have multiple runners for parallel jobs, for open source projects. Also, there is an enterprise support. I haven't used it, but they do boast an impressive number of clients, and you can see that they process 1 million builds every day. Um, so some of the features that you see here, they might not be so unique. So it's not like that they are the leader in the market, but it's common across the tools, and it's been around for years. So it is somewhat gaining trust within the community. And the performance, some performance is fine. I haven't seen any major outages, some minor outages here and there, minor um, performance degradation. Apart from that, I have no complaint using this. And that's it.